Republicans are winning the all-important money game ahead of the midterms. The National Republican Congressional Committee raised just over $10 million in the month of January, while the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee raised $9.35 million. A spokesperson for the GOP committee credited the tax cuts and a strong stable of candidates for the fundraising advantage. Joining me right now, former Deputy Trump campaign manager David Bossie, co-author of the new book, Let Trump Be Trump. It's a great title. This is part of what you guys were able to do during the campaign, which he used very successfully. When you look at what's going on right now, though, David, you know, in terms of this Mueller indictment, in terms of him now going after another person that was tied to the campaign, whose father-in-law is a Russian oligarch, do you think that it's getting better, worse? I mean, how would you diagnose what's happening now?
Well, first of all, I think this lawyer's indictment, it had literally nothing to do with the campaign. This person was a lawyer for Rick Gates, who has been under indictment, and the lawyer's being charged with lying and possibly destroying evidence, meaning getting rid of emails. So it has zero connection to the president's campaign or to anyone involved in the president's campaign.
Let me ask you this as well, because there's a lot going on today, and I want to get to the bump stocks issue in just a second. But the president is coming out fully supportive of Mitt Romney, someone who he wasn't so supportive, shall we say, before winning, and someone who had been highly critical of him. But let's face it, by the way, Mitt Romney was right. Don't forget, President Obama was going after Romney, saying, you know, you can take your 1980s foreign policy back, right? Because he understood that Russia indeed was a threat.
That's right.
How do you think Romney's going to do? And do you anticipate the president being fully supportive and behind him, even though there's this whole Russia thing that could perhaps at times be in the way?
Let's talk about it in a big picture, and then we'll go to Mitt Romney, if that's okay. My belief is that this president understands that his agenda and the success of his agenda, the things that are making America great again, you know, are on deck when it comes to the November election. And what I mean by that is we have to win additional seats in the Senate, and we have to keep the House of Representatives. If we do not, the first thing Speaker Pelosi is going to do is try to impeach this president, try to end this agenda. And so when it goes to supporting candidates like Mitt Romney, he's doing that across the country in state after state to make sure that a Republican wins a seat that we must have. And this is a replacement of Orrin Hatch. It's a seat that a Republican is most likely going to win. And Mitt Romney, if he comes to Washington and is going to want to participate in the president's agenda, I welcome him.
Bump stocks. There are members of the base that may not like what the president is trying to do here. What do you say?
You know, I'm a member of that base, and I'm also an avid gun owner and hunter, and my kids are as well. And I got to tell you, until the Las Vegas shooting, and I own a lot of guns, never heard of bump stocks. I'm not a guy who is worried about having bump stocks being regulated in some form. I think that what the president's doing is sound and responsible. And I think that whether it's going to be regulating bump stocks or making it tougher for people to get guns, meaning a stringent background check. It has to be done in a hurry, and it has to be done, the right way. But we have to have maybe some tougher background checks, and I think that all Americans can come together on that, whether you're a gun owner like myself or somebody who's opposed to guns.
Well, you know, it's going to take some real leadership, though, David. I mean, maybe this goes back to this is your book title, right?
And that's what this president's good at. He's very good at leading and taking that heat. He talked about it with immigration. He said, I'll take the heat if we can pass something that solves this problem. And Democrats obviously don't want to. They would rather have talking points, and I think we'll see where the rubber meets the road on this issue as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, the NRA has been pretty powerful. The NRA, for goodness sakes, backed him for president.
Of course. And I don't think the NRA... And I don't think the NRA is going to have a problem with regulating bump stocks. I don't know. I haven't seen what they've said.
What about the background checks?
I think the NRA has been very responsible over the many years of background checks. And I think that if it's going, especially if it's about mental health issues related to that background check, I think that that's going to be something that the NRA and this president can grab a hold of and move it forward.
Look, it's amazing. I would just point to the incredibleness of this. I mean, it's like Nixon in China, right? Because the president that the Democrats thought would be awful when it came to gun issues and just awful on immigration, may be the president that solves some of these things and meets them halfway.
A broken Washington. A broken Washington, D.C. is the reason, one of the reasons, that this president got elected, was to come here and make change, come here and make Washington work again. And that, he's a businessman, and that's kind of what he was known for in that world, and that's what he's doing here in Washington.
He's shaking things up for sure. David, it's good to see you. Thanks for coming on.